My boss gave me a $50 coffee card for 10 years of work. In front of our new parent company's chief executive officer, he asked, "Used it yet?" I smiled. I gave it to my new boss. He said it perfectly shows your team's budget priorities. My boss froze. The new chief executive officer stared at him and asked quietly, "Is that true?" That was the ending. To understand how I, Toby, the meticulous senior project coordinator, got there, we have to go back to the beginning, the mandatory 2 o'clock gathering in the break room. For 10 years, I had given Crosspoint Software a decade of my life. My name is Toby, and I am a senior project coordinator. I have smoothed over client calls where Steve promised features that did not exist. I have missed family events to fix technical failures that Steve caused because he thought system dependencies were optional. I was the silent, competent core, the one who kept the rusty, squealing machine from seizing up entirely. And what was the grand celebration for that tenure? The break room smelled permanently like microwaved fish and dashed dreams, a scent that perfectly captured the company's morale. Steve Harrison, the regional director of Looking Busy, clinked a plastic fork against a Diet Coke can to get everyone's attention. He was wearing that navy blue blazer he thought made him look like a tech mogul, but in reality made him look like a divorced magician. "All right, team, gather around," Steve boomed, flashing a smile that never quite reached his eyes. He exuded the forced, synthetic enthusiasm of a man who only cared about the ceremony, not the substance. Today is a big day, a huge day. We are celebrating a milestone. A smattering of polite, obligatory applause followed as he gestured toward me. Most of it came from the junior developers I had quietly saved from being fired, and from Chloe, my mentee, who looked like she was wrestling with the urge to throw her laptop at Steve's head on my behalf. 10 years. Steve continued, placing a heavy, unwelcome hand on my shoulder. I flinched internally, forcing myself to remain still and perform the necessary gratitude. That is loyalty. That is grit. And to show our appreciation for everything you do, Toby, keeping the trains running, right? We got you a little something. I was not expecting a bonus. Steve had been crying poverty about the department budget for 6 months. I was not even expecting a plaque, but I expected dignity, perhaps a handwritten card, something that acknowledged the actual value of my expertise. He reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out a small, flimsy envelope. He handed it to me with a flourish. I opened it. Inside was a Starbucks gift card. I turned it over. Written in thick black Sharpie across the back where the value was usually printed was the number $50. $50. $5 per year. A cup of coffee for every 2 years of service. I looked up at Steve. He was beaming, waiting for me to perform the grand spectacle of appreciation. He expected me to be touched, maybe even teary. Spend it all in one place. He chuckled, looking around the room for the laughter he never received. No one laughed. Even the HR representative looked down at her shoes, embarrassed. "Thanks, Steve," I managed. My voice was level, almost unnaturally steady. Inside, however, the massive structural suspension bridge made of 10 years of patience was collapsing into a river of gasoline. A decade of my professional life was worth 2.5 large lats. "Only the best for our MVP," he said, slapping my back one last time before diving toward the sheet cake, a generic vanilla slab that had "Congratulate" sick written in runny blue icing. The wave of humiliation washed over me, but it was quickly replaced by a cold, surgical clarity. I walked back to my desk. I did not scream. I did not flip my chair. I am a project coordinator. We do not make messes. We clean them up. But as I sat down, the fury was sharp and focused. The humiliation had been delivered, and now a deep, icy determination settled in my core. I was done seeking validation. I would now seek justice. The $50 gift card lay next to my keyboard, its bright green logo mocking my decade of effort. I was still simmering in the aftermath of the ceremony when an email notification flashed on my screen, cutting through the haze of humiliation. The subject line was immediate and demanding. Important announcement: acquisition news. Crosspoint Software was being acquired by Helix Dynamics, a massive parent company. I felt a surge of cold, analytical dread. The email stated that the transition team, led by a chief executive officer named Adrian Lee, would be on site starting next week. Their mandate was simple and terrifying: to evaluate operational efficiency and leadership redundancy. I looked at the cheap plastic card. 10 years of my life summarized in $50, sitting next to an email that signaled the potential implosion of the entire company structure. The irony was not lost on me. The very incompetence that had led to my insult, Steve's management, was exactly what Helix Dynamics was coming to cut. Steve came strolling past my cubicle, a piece of the gooey vanilla sheet cake balanced precariously on a paper plate. His phone was held up to his ear, probably talking to his broker or his golf buddy. "Big news, Toby," he barked, his voice loud and utterly lacking in concern, as if the acquisition were merely an inconvenience, not a threat. "Don't worry. I'll handle the transition. You just keep doing what you do. Keep the paperwork off my desk so I can focus on the big picture with the new overlords." His arrogance was a concrete thing. He actually believed he was indispensable, that his job was safe. He thought I was the office Roomba, quiet, automatic, and incapable of recording anything substantial. "Of course, Steve," I replied, my voice perfectly neutral, masking the steel forming in my gut. "I'll keep everything organized." He didn't hear the tone. He never does. He didn't see the fire in my eyes. He only saw the quiet, compliant coordinator. He waddled back toward his corner office, leaving a sugary smudge on the edge of my cubicle wall. I swiveled my chair away from my current project. I opened a small, locked drawer next to my filing cabinet. It was not where I kept snacks or spare gym clothes. Inside was a hard drive, a single terabyte of cold, silent data. For 10 years, Steve had played fast and loose with everything: the budget, client expectations, and corporate policy and reality itself. I, the meticulous project coordinator, was the one who was forced to document every lie, every corner cut, and every instance of nepotism just to cover my own operational flank. I had copies of lavish vendor invoices that were clearly family trips. I had the consulting fees paid to his brother-in-law for information technology work that had never been performed. I had the requests for simple operational necessities like dual monitors denied, while he spent $50,000 last quarter upgrading the executive lounge, a fact I had saved under a confusing line item. I had every contradictory email, every approved expense report he thought was buried in the archives. I picked up the Starbucks card, feeling its cheap plastic weight, $50. I whispered to the empty air, turning back to my monitors. I connected the hard drive. I did not open my current project timeline. I opened a new folder on the company network, one that Steve had given me access to, and titled it Transition Documentation Do Not Delete. I started dragging files. The action was slow and deliberate, each file transfer an affirmation of my new purpose. Steve thought he had bought my silence and loyalty for $50. What he had actually purchased was a front-row ticket to his own operational audit. Adrian Lee, the new chief executive officer, was reputed to cut bloated middle management ruthlessly. Steve was about to find out just how bloated he really was. The game was no longer about a raise or a title. It was about dignity, accountability, and justice. The architect was ready. The files were loading. The files detailing Steve's financial negligence were secured. Over the weekend, the office energy shifted entirely. Monday morning smelled like fear and floor wax. With Adrian Lee and the Helix Dynamics transition team due to arrive in 3 days, Steve had entered a state of manic delusion I internally labeled the pig and the lipstick protocol. Suddenly, things that had been ignored for 5 years were emergencies. The dusty plant in the lobby was replaced. The flickering light in the hallway was fixed by a confused electrician Steve seemed to have pulled off the street. Steve himself was running around with the sweaty desperation of a man who had completely forgotten to study for a final exam that determined whether he kept his house. "Toby," he barked at 8:15 in the morning, looming over my cubicle divider. He smelled of aggressive cologne and pure anxiety. "I need you to pull the Q3 and Q4 project summaries and the efficiency metrics. We need to build a deck, a big deck, something that screams world-class innovation." I did not look up immediately from my screen. "We have the summaries, Steve," I said, keeping my voice mild. "They are in the shared drive. The ones showing we were 15% over budget on the alpha rollout because of that vendor change you authorized." He twitched, a nervous tick jumping near his left eye. Right about that. We need to massage the narrative. The new chief executive officer, Adrian Lee, she's a numbers person. but she doesn't know the context. I need you to rework the slides. Put the vendor overages under research and development expansion, or maybe legacy system maintenance. I paused, my fingers resting on the keyboard. I was not asking for clarity, merely documenting the instruction. You want me to reclassify cost overruns as research investments. It's all part of the same pot, Toby. He laughed, a short, nervous hacking sound. Don't get bogged down in the accounting weeds. Just make it look green. I need that deck by tomorrow morning. I have a vision meeting with Adrian's advanced team. Sure, Steve, I said, looking up with a perfectly compliant expression. I'll get right on that. I didn't say no. You never say no to a man like Steve when he is panicking. You say yes, and then you document the request. I spent the rest of the day building 2 decks. Deck A was the truth spiraling costs, delayed timelines, and massive unwarranted payouts to consultants who did nothing. Deck B was Steve's fantasy, full of buzzwords like synergy and paradigm shifts, with graphs that inexplicably went up and to the right because I had changed the axis scale to hide the dips. At 4:30 in the afternoon, Steve marched back to my cubicle. Let's see it, he ordered. I pulled up Deck B, he nodded, scrolling through the slides. See, this looks like a department that is lean and mean. Oh, delete that slide about the server migration delay, and change the leadership travel line item to client acquisition costs. Steve, I said, keeping my voice level. If we change that, it won't match the invoices in the finance system. If they audit, they won't audit the line items in the first week, Toby. He snapped, his face flushing red. They are looking at the big picture. Stop being such a pessimist and be a team player. Just make the changes. Okay, I replied, my commitment to the lie sealed. I'll send the final version to your inbox. He patted my desk, leaving another smudge. That's why you're my rock, T-Bone. 10 more years, right? He then waddled away to his corner office, presumably to practice his executive presence in the mirror. I saved the fraudulent Deck B and emailed it to him, but then I did something else. I immediately went into the version history of the file and took a screenshot of the metadata, showing exactly when the changes were made and by whom, me, but logged under his urgent, confirmed directive from the Slack message I had him send 5 minutes prior. Then, I opened the folder the new parent company had set up for the audit prep. It was a restricted folder, but as senior coordinator, I had upload access. I did not upload Steve's fantasy deck. Instead, I uploaded the raw data files, the unedited, ugly, bleeding red Excel sheets that showed exactly where the money had gone. I named the file Q3 Q4 raw data source do not edit.xlsx and buried it inside a subfolder titled Legacy Archives. It was a breadcrumb. Adrian Lee is a numbers person, Steve. Good numbers people dig, and when she digs, she is going to find that the beautiful pie chart you present tomorrow is made entirely of lies and expense reports from high-end resorts. The first, and most crucial, piece of independent evidence was now secured in the hands of the auditors. Wednesday arrived, and with it, the Helix Dynamics entourage. Adrian Lee walked in like a weather front, cool, precise, and impossible to ignore. She was flanked by 2 assistants who moved with the unnerving efficiency of people who ate spreadsheets for breakfast. Steve was vibrating at a frequency usually reserved for small dogs during a thunderstorm. His strategy, I quickly realized, was divide and conquer, specifically by dividing me from the new leadership so he could monopolize the narrative. Toby, Steve said, stopping by my desk at 9 o'clock that morning, holding a stack of files against his chest like a personal shield. Listen, regarding the strategy lunch with Adrian today, I think it's best if you sit this one out. Stay here and man the fort. We don't want to overwhelm them with too many cooks in the kitchen, right? Besides, someone needs to make sure the printers don't jam. I am the senior project coordinator. I built the strategy they were discussing. I knew the operational reality of the department better than anyone in the room. But I put on my best compliant employee face. Understood, Steve, I said. You handle the big picture. He looked relieved. Exactly. Oh, and if anyone asks about that delay on the Delta project, just mention that the team was struggling with the new coding language. We don't need to bore them with the details of the approval holdups. Blame the developers, I noted internally. Got it. He winked clumsily and rushed off. I watched him go, marveling at how he managed to throw an entire department under the bus before he had even finished his morning coffee. An hour later, I was deep in a pivot table when a young woman in a sharp gray suit appeared at my cubicle. It was Sarah, one of Adrian's aides. "Hey," she said. "Sarah from operations. Steve mentioned in the briefing that he handles all the primary workflow mapping. But I noticed your name is on, well, literally every document in the repository." I offered a small, tight smile. It was the smile of a tiger watching a gazelle limp. "Steve is very hands-on," I lied smoothly. "But yes, I manage the execution details." Sarah tapped her tablet. "Adrian likes to get a ground floor view. Would you mind if I shadowed you for an hour, just to see how the data flows?" "I'd be delighted," I said. "Pull up a chair." For the next 60 minutes, I put on a master class. I did not say a single derogatory word about Steve. I didn't have to. I just let the work speak for itself. Sarah pointed to a red flag on a dashboard showing budget variance. "So," Sarah asked, her finger tracing a line on her tablet, "why is this vendor payment 6 weeks late?" "Oh," I said, pulling up the detailed log with 2 clicks. I prepared the invoice on the first. "It's currently sitting in the director approval queue. It has been there for 44 days. The director approval queue," Sarah repeated, her typing speed increasing. "That's Steve." "Yes, he's very busy," I said, my tone as sweet as peach tea. "He has a lot of off-site meetings." Sarah frowned slightly and made a long note. She pointed to another section. "And the scheduling conflict here. It looks like the engineering team was double booked on core resources." "Correct," I nodded. I flagged the conflict in Outlook 3 times. "Here are the decline notifications." I opened a folder labeled Steve Overrides. Steve felt it was important to push for the aggressive timeline, so he overrode the capacity warnings. "He overrode the capacity warnings," Sarah repeated, looking faintly stunned. "The result?" I continued simply. "We missed the deadline by 3 weeks and paid $12,000 in overtime." But the team really rallied. Sarah stopped typing. She looked at me. Then she looked across the bullpen at the chaos of sticky notes on Steve's glass wall, where he had written SYNRGY in giant red letters. "Does he know how to use the project management software?" she asked, lowering her voice. I took a slow sip of my water. "He prefers to lead through verbal inspiration." Sarah closed her tablet with a soft, final click. That was I, opening. "Thank you, Toby. Anytime, Sarah. I'm just here to help." Later that afternoon, I walked past the conference room. Steve was at the head of the table, waving his arms, pointing at a slide that I knew contained made-up numbers. Adrian Lee was sitting perfectly still, watching him. Then I saw her look down at her phone, which had just vibrated. Sarah had sent her a message. Adrian looked up at Steve for the first time with a new expression. It wasn't a smile, but the look of a mechanic who just realized the used car they were inspecting had sawdust in the transmission. Steve kept talking, completely oblivious. He thought he was charming the new boss. He didn't know the printer watching project coordinator had just handed over the keys to the crime scene. The sense of validation was profound. Thursday morning, the air in the office was thin. Adrian Lee's team was no longer just observing, they were auditing. I could hear the clicking of calculators from the conference room down the hall, a sound far more dangerous than any angry phone call. Steve was sweating through his second shirt of the day by 10 o'clock. He called me into his office and shut the door. The blinds were drawn, which I recognized as his universal signal for attempting something highly illegal. "Toby, sit," he said, pacing frantically behind his massive desk. "We have a small hiccup. The finance team from Helix is asking for a breakdown of the external consulting budget." I knew exactly what he was talking about. I kept my hands clasped in my lap, projecting an image of calm efficiency. "You mean the contract with Apex Solutions?" I said. Right, Apex." Steve waved his hand dismissively. "Great guys, critical work." "Steve," I pressed gently, "Apex is your brother-in-law's company. They invoice us $4,500 a month for information technology optimization. We have an internal information technology department. What exactly are they optimizing?" It's high-level strategy, Toby. You wouldn't see it on the daily logs," he snapped, wiping his forehead with a fast food napkin. The point is, the margins look lopsided. I need you to go into the expense report for Q3 and reallocate some of those costs. Spread them out. Put some under training, some under hardware. Just smooth it out so it doesn't look like a lump sum. He was asking me to commit fraud, plain and simple. He wanted me to launder his nepotism through the general ledger. This was the moment of direct, personal risk. I looked him straight in the eye, my voice perfectly steady. I can't do that. Steve stopped pacing instantly. Excuse me, the expense codes are locked once the quarter closes. I explained, keeping to the technical facts. To change them now, I'd have to file a correction request with finance, and that flags an automatic review. If I move that money, it looks like I made the mistake. I am giving you a direct order. He slammed his hand on the desk, causing a bobblehead of his own face to wobble aggressively. Figure it out! Adrian Lee sees a $15,000 line item for consulting with no deliverables attached. She's going to ask questions I don't want to answer. I understand, I said calmly, but I won't touch the historical data. It's against compliance. This was the full pivot the moment I finally put my own integrity ahead of his immediate demands. Steve stared at me, his face contorting. He wanted to fire me, but he couldn't. He didn't know the passwords. He didn't know where the files were. He didn't know how to turn on the coffee machine without help. Fine, he hissed. I'll do it myself. I have admin access. You do? I agreed. You certainly do. He shooed me out of the office. I walked back to my desk and immediately drafted a message to myself. A time-stamped note detailing the conversation verbatim. 10:14 a.m. Steve requested reallocation of Apex Solutions funds. Request denied due to compliance violation. Then I watched the system logs. At 10:30 a.m., a modification alert popped up. Steve was in the ledger. He was clumsy. He moved $5,000 to employee education and $5,000 to software licensing. He thought he was hiding the trail. What he actually did was trigger a mismatch with the vendor tax IDs. You cannot pay a software license fee to a company registered as a sole proprietorship for consulting services without the system throwing a red flag. I saw the flag appear on the back end, a silent alarm blinking red in the finance database. I could have fixed it. I could have called finance and told them it was a coding error. That is what the loyal Toby would have done 2 years ago. Instead, I took a sip of my lukewarm coffee and let it blink. I felt a sense of objective righteousness, the satisfaction of watching the trap spring on its own operator. 10 minutes later, I received an email from the Helix finance lead, copied to Adrian Lee. Subject: urgent discrepancy in Q3 ledger. It asked Steve to explain the manual override and the tax ID mismatch. I looked over the partition. Steve was staring at his screen, his face the color of old oatmeal. He looked up and caught my eye. I did not smile. I did not frown. I just raised my $50 Starbucks card slightly, like a toast, and took another sip. He scrambled to type a reply. He had just left a digital fingerprint the size of a billboard. The trap wasn't set by me. It was set by his own panicked greed, and I had simply refused to disarm it. With the silent ledger alarm triggered, Steve was wounded, and a wounded animal bites. He knew I was too dangerous now to attack directly, so on Friday morning, he went for the weakest link, Chloe. Chloe is 24, brilliant, but terrifyingly anxious. She is my mentee, and the kind of employee who apologizes when you bump into her. I was in the break room getting water when I heard Steve's voice booming from the hallway. He had cornered Adrian Lee and was gesturing wildly toward the open bullpen where Chloe sat, already looking small and stressed. It's really a training issue, I heard Steve say, loud enough for half the floor to hear. I've been trying to get the junior staff up to speed, but the GDPR compliance update, Chloe just dropped the ball. I delegated it weeks ago, and she just sat on it. It's unfortunate, but that's the talent pool we're working with. Adrian Lee listened, her face unreadable. A GDPR miss is a serious liability, Steve. That's a six-figure fine risk. I know, Steve whined, acting the martyr. I'm cleaning it up now, but you know how it is. Can't micromanage everything. I walked back to my desk. Chloe was visibly shaking, tears welling up in her eyes. She looked at me, her expression one of utter panic. Toby, I didn't. He never told me? Yes, I said softly, sitting down. Did he send you the request? No. He never said a word about GDPR. I thought legal handled that. Okay, I said. Do not cry. He wants you to cry. We don't cry. We forward. This was the final straw. Steve had not just failed to do his job. He was actively risking the career of an innocent member of the team I had sworn to protect. This transcended mere fraud. This was betrayal. My internal conflict, the fear of confrontation, was instantly obliterated by the courage to protect Chloe. I opened my archives and searched GDPR. I found it, an email dated 6 weeks ago from legal, sent to Steve, marked high importance. The body read, Steve, this needs your signature and review by the 15th. Do not delegate this to junior staff as it requires director-level authorization. Receipt confirmed Steve had opened the email. He had never replied. He had never forwarded it to Chloe. He had simply ignored it, probably while planning his golf trip. I hit forward. I addressed it to Steve. I copied Adrian Lee. I copied the head of legal. And I copied Chloe. The subject line was surgical. Re-GDPR compliance clarification on timeline. Steve, I believe there is some confusion regarding the GDPR delay discussed this morning. Please see the attached email thread from legal, dated 6 weeks ago, explicitly stating this task required director-level signature and was not to be delegated to junior staff. According to the server logs, this email was opened by you on the 12th, but no action was taken. Chloe does not have the clearance level to access these files, as per your own security protocol memo attached. I have the compliance forms ready for your signature now to mitigate the risk. Let me know when you are ready to sign. Best, Toby. I hit send. The sound of the mouse click felt like a gavel banging. 3 minutes later, Steve's office door flew open. He stormed out, looking for me, but then he saw Adrian Lee standing by Chloe's desk, reading something on her phone. Adrian looked up. She looked at Steve. Then she looked back at Chloe. Chloe, Adrian said, her voice surprisingly gentle. Don't worry about the compliance issue. It seems there was a communication error at the leadership level. Go grab a coffee. Steve froze in the middle of the hallway. He looked at me. I was typing away, looking incredibly busy. He marched over to my desk, lowering his voice to a hiss. You copied the chief executive officer. Are you out of your mind? We keep this inside the family, Tobia. I finally looked up. Chloe is the family, Steve. You're just the landlord and you're neglecting the property. You're playing a dangerous game. He spat, his face purple. I'm not playing, Steve. I said, pointing to my monitor. I'm coordinating. That's what you pay me for. Or, well, that's what you pay me $50 for. He recoiled like I had slapped him. He realized then that I wasn't just incompetent or lazy. He realized I was hostile and worse, factually accurate. He backed away, retreating to his office. Adrian Lee watched the entire interaction from across the room. She didn't intervene. She was simply gathering the final, critical data point. The director blames his subordinates for his own negligence. Strike 2, Steve. With the atmosphere in the office brittle and Adrian Lee, having witnessed Steve's last desperate act of scapegoating, the stage was set for the final confrontation. The Tuesday all-hands question and answer session. I did not want to rely on the digital breadcrumbs alone. I needed the human element. Late Monday afternoon, I saw Adrian Lee walking through the bullpen alone, reviewing notes on a tablet. This was the moment. I waited until she passed my row, then stood up, holding a plain manila folder. Miss Lee, I said quietly. She stopped and turned. Her eyes were tired, but sharp. Toby, the project coordinator, right? Sarah from operations speaks highly of you. Says you know where the bodies are buried. I don't bury bodies, Miss Lee, I said, offering a small, tight smile. I just filed the death certificates. I held out the folder. Steve asked us to prepare some materials for the transition. He wanted to make sure you saw the highlight reel. I thought you might want the raw footage instead for context. She looked at the folder, then back at my steady face. Is this going to ruin my dinner? It might clarify your lunch tomorrow, I replied. She took it, her fingers brushing the stiff cardboard. Thank you, Toby. Just doing my job. I sat back down. I did not rant about Steve. I simply handed over the ammunition. The climax was now inevitable. The next morning, the day of the question and answer, Steve was frantic. He was arranging chairs, checking the microphone, and sweating through his third suit of the week. Everyone remember the plan. He whispered loudly to the senior staff. Positive vibes. Future focused. He came up to me. Toby, why don't you sit in the back? Maybe help with the catering. Make sure the soda doesn't run out. Sure, Steve, I said. I'll be right in the back. Good boy. He actually said good boy, like I was a golden retriever that had just learned not to pee on the rug. I walked to the back of the room near the soda coolers. I watched the staff file in, and then Adrienne Lee entered, holding her tablet and my manila folder. She placed it on the table directly in front of her, face down. Steve started the meeting, booming and charming, laughing too hard at his own jokes. He introduced Adrienne Lee with a speech that was 80% adjectives and 0% substance. And now, Steve beamed. I'll hand it over to our new leader, Adrienne Lee, for some questions. Who wants to start? Mike, I think you had a question. Mike, looking thoroughly uncomfortable, raised his hand and asked about their vision for international synergy. I leaned against the back wall, sipping a Diet Coke. Steve looked triumphant, thinking he was conducting an orchestra. He didn't notice that Adrienne Lee's hand was resting lightly on the folder, nor that she hadn't answered Mike's question yet. The question and answer session dragged on. Adrienne Lee answered the softball questions politely, but her eyes kept drifting towards Steve, who was practically vibrating with self-satisfaction. He thought the positive vibe shield was holding. We were wrapping up. People were starting to eye the sandwich platters. One last thing, Steve announced, stepping back to the microphone. I just want to say how proud I am of this team. We're a family here. We take care of each other. He scanned the room looking for proof. His eyes landed on me in the back. Take Toby, for example, Steve boomed. Every head turned. I froze. Oh no, don't do it, Steve. Don't drag me into your theater. Toby just hit his 10-year anniversary. Steve continued, oblivious to the temperature dropping in the room. He turned to Adrienne Lee, grinning. We believe in rewarding loyalty here. Small tokens of appreciation go a long way, right? He chuckled. So, Toby, did you ever use that coffee card I gave you? A double-shot espresso on the company. It was a throwaway line, intended to portray himself as a generous boss. The room was silent. Adrienne Lee looked at me. She was not smiling. I pushed off the wall and walked forward a few steps, just enough to be seen clearly by everyone. Actually, Steve, I said. My voice was not loud, but in the dead silence, it carried like a bell. I didn't use it. Steve's smile faltered slightly. Oh, saving it for a rainy day. I looked directly at Adrienne Lee. I gave it to Miss Lee, I said. Steve blinked. What? My boss gave me a $50 coffee card for 10 years of work. In front of our new parent company's chief executive officer, he asked, used it yet? I smiled. I gave it to my new boss. He said it perfectly shows your team's budget priorities. My boss froze. I included it in the folder I gave her yesterday, along with the receipt. I continued, my voice steady, cold, and absolutely clear. I told her, a $50 gift card for 10 years of service perfectly illustrates your department's budget priorities, especially when compared to the $50,000 spent on the executive lounge renovation last month. The silence that followed wasn't just quiet, it was a vacuum. You could hear the hum of the vending machine in the hallway. Steve's mouth opened and closed like a fish on a dock. Now, Toby, that's a mischaracterization. Adrienne Lee spoke. She didn't stand up. She just tapped the folder. I reviewed the contents of this folder last night, Steve, and Toby is right. The math is illuminating. She slid the Starbucks card out of the folder and placed it on the table. The little plastic card looked absurdly bright against the dark wood. $50, Adrienne Lee said, for a decade. She looked up at Steve. Is that true? Is this how you value your assets, Steve? Or is this just how you value the people who hide your liabilities? Steve looked at me. There was no anger in his eyes anymore. Just sheer, unadulterated terror. I didn't smirk. I didn't smirk. I didn't gloat. I simply took a final sip of my Diet Coke. I didn't smirk. I didn't gloat. I simply took a final sip of my Diet Coke. I think I'll take that sandwich now, I said, and I walked out of the room. Behind me, the murmurs exploded. You can't spin gravity. The silence left in the conference room was the quietest thing I had ever orchestrated. For the first time in 10 years, I felt light. I didn't need coffee. The adrenaline was plenty. The rest of the afternoon was a study in slow-motion demolition. Steve didn't come back to his office. Adrian Lee did. She walked straight into the conference room with the head of human resources and closed the door. 10 minutes later, Steve was summoned. He walked past my desk looking like he was marching to the gallows. He didn't look at me. He was staring at the carpet, his face a blotchy map of regret. Around 3 o'clock, the door opened again. Steve walked out. He wasn't holding his blazer or his phone. He was holding a small cardboard box escorted by a silent, professional security guard. He stopped at his office door, packed a few meager personal items. The bobblehead, a framed photo of himself golfing. He tried to log into his computer. Access denied. He tried again. Access denied. He looked around the bullpen at the team he had bullied, gaslighted, and ignored. No one made eye contact. Then he looked at me. I was the only one looking back. I simply nodded. Acknowledgement, goodbye, and closure. He grabbed his box and walked to the elevator. The doors closed, and the ding of the elevator was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. 5 minutes later, an email hit everyone's inbox from Adrian Lee. Subject: leadership update. Team, effective immediately. Steve Harrison is no longer with Crosspoint Software. We thank him for his contributions. Contributions, I whispered. Corporate speak for the mess he left behind. Sarah, Adrian's aide, appeared at my desk. Toby, Adrian would like to see you in Steve's. Excuse me, in the director's office. I stood up. My legs felt a little shaky, but I smoothed my shirt. I walked into the corner office. It still smelled faintly of Steve's aggressive cologne, but the desk was bare. Adrian Lee was standing by the window looking out at the parking lot. He's gone, she said, not turning around. I replied. She turned. She looked tired, but her gaze was direct. I went through the raw data you provided, the files in the legacy folder, the emails you forwarded. It's a disaster, Toby. The budget is a fiction. The timelines are hallucinations. He was running a Ponzi scheme with company time. I know, I said. I've been trying to patch the leaks with duct tape for 5 years. Why didn't you leave? She asked. Someone with your documentation skills could have gone anywhere. I like the work, I said honestly. I like the team. I just didn't like the obstruction. Adrian Lee nodded. She sat on the edge of the desk, Steve's desk. Well, the obstruction is gone, but the mess remains. Usually in an acquisition like this, when a department is this mismanaged, we gut it. We fire the leadership, we lay off the support staff, and we start over. My heart sank. Was I going down with the ship I just meticulously torpedoed? But, she continued, you didn't let the ship sink. You kept the records, protected the junior staff, and kept the clients happy despite the chaos. She picked up something from the desk. It was the $50 Starbucks card. She slid it across the mahogany surface toward me. I can't cash this, she said. It's unethical for me to accept gifts from employees. But I can offer a trade. A trade. I need an interim director? Adrian Lee said. Someone who knows where the bodies are buried, and more importantly, how to exhume them and give them a proper burial so we can move on. I need someone to clean up this mess officially, with the authority to actually do it. I stared at her. You want me to take Steve's job? I want you to take the job Steve should have been doing. She corrected. We'll do a 6-month trial, title bump, salary adjustment, a significant adjustment, a mandate to restructure the team as you see fit. She looked back at me. Do you want it? I looked at the empty chair behind the desk, then out the window at the parking lot where Steve's rental car was no longer parked. I thought about the 10 years of late nights, the gaslighting, the missed promotion, and the $50 insult. I have one condition, I said. Adrian Lee raised an eyebrow. Negotiating already? Good. No appreciation parties with grocery store cake, I said. And no gift cards. If the team does well, we pay them. If they work late, we pay them. We treat them like adults, not campers. Adrian Lee smiled, a real one this time. She extended her hand. Deal. No gift cards, just the work. I shook her hand. It was firm. I'll start with the GDPR compliance, I said. And I'm canceling the contract with Apex Solutions within the hour. Music to my ears, she said. The office is yours, Toby. I walked back to my old cubicle to pack up my personal items. I saw the $50 Starbucks card sitting on my keyboard where I had left it. I picked it up and walked over to the break room. Chloe was there, making tea. "Is everything okay?" she asked, looking nervous. "With Steve gone, are we all in trouble?" "No," I said. "We're fine. Better than fine." I held out the card. "Here, go get yourself a coffee. A venti. Put whatever sugary syrup you want in it." "Really? But wasn't this your anniversary gift?" "It's not a gift," I said. "It's a relic from a previous administration." She took it, smiling tentatively. "Thanks, Toby." "You're the best. Get back to work, Chloe," I said gently. "We have a department to rebuild." I walked toward the corner office. I peeled a CYNRGY sticky note off the glass wall, crumpled it into a ball, and tossed it into the trash can. It landed perfectly, nothing but net. I sat down in the big chair. It was comfortable. I opened my email. To all staff. From Toby, interim director. Subject: next steps. I started typing. The bridge didn't burn down. I just burned the toll booth. And now traffic was finally moving.